Hi, this is Timothy Jackson, and I have been tasked with looking at a case study at Truman Elementary School. They are having some problems that they would like me to look at and come up with some strategies to best help them move forward. So, what do we know? Well, we know that 1 hour of the school day is spent on ELA instruction, and that strategic reading is randomly taught, and that there's virtually no individualized instruction. We also know that reading scores have dropped as students advance to the next grade. And for example, we have here in the first grade, the median score was 52, and by 8th grade, it's 46. It really never gets back up above where it started based on these statistics. Now, what do we need to know about this particular problem? Well, big question is, what support does the staff need to change these reading levels? Because they are clearly below what we are wanting them to be. And what specifics need to be changed in the curriculum to best support the students? And this will require an analysis of the old curriculum to find this out. And also, another thing we need to know is, what are all the parents' perceptions on the current curriculum? And I'm not just talking about PTO, because not all parents are represented in the PTO, despite PTO's best efforts. So what is the problem? The problem is that we see that student achievement in reading drops as the grades progress, in part because student levels are not properly managed at an individualized level, and because phonics is not adequately taught. And we know this because we had a reading supervisor come into the school and observe the classes, and the reading supervisor wrote down these observations. Also, the principal has made several observations on this particular issue as well. So, the plan of action. First off, phonics needs to be more in depth, and the curriculum will be realigned to adjust for this change. Next, the students need to write about what they have read. In order to demonstrate that they are actually understanding what they read, they need to write it out. And third, individualized instruction is a must. There needs to be a lot more one-on-one work. The reading supervisor mentioned that there's a lot more whole group sort of thing going on, and there needs to be more one-on-one with the students so the teacher can address the problems of each individual student as opposed to as a whole. Because if you just address it as a whole, then there's always going to be some students who fall through the cracks, and that will affect the scores. So what are the strategies for the plan? Well, first off, a panel of teachers will realign the curriculum, and they'll receive a paid PD to resolve the issues of the curriculum. If we can obtain a grant, and we are applying for a grant to hopefully help us fill in the gaps, the grant should help us with the paid PD, as well as perhaps bringing in some experts. For the training, which second should be given to all the teachers on this particular transition to a new curriculum. The reading supervisor mentioned that some teachers are very familiar with these changes, changing to more individualized instruction as well as to a more phonics curriculum. And there are some teachers who are not very familiar with this. For those teachers, it could be a bit of a painful transition. And in order for that to be as least problematic as possible, we'll need to be giving these teachers training. Now, observations are going to be made on the proper implementation of the new strategies. So, for example, a teacher is going to be observed to see if they're following along with the curriculum and how well they are following along. And if they are doing okay, then they won't really need any more assistance. If they are not doing so well, if they are having trouble putting these strategies into practice, then mandatory training in these issues will commence. And this isn't going to be a punishment. This is to help those teachers out. And they, of course, will be compensated when they go to these trainings. Also, data shows that scores rise from first to second grade. And so it's possible that these teachers might be able to help those teachers who are struggling. So, how will the plan help the students? Well, the students are going to be challenged based on their level. And that means that the whole group instruction will be minimized to accommodate these changes. And we got that from the reading supervisor, who noticed that there was a lot more whole group instruction. A potential strategy that could be helpful would be rotating centers so that the teacher can have one-on-one time with students, but the students who aren't having the one-on-one time are doing other things. Perhaps reading a book or doing some sort of a reading project. Students will also be required to read books that challenge them and write about the book to demonstrate understanding. This was something the reading supervisor also noticed, that these students are not being challenged by what they are reading, and they're also not writing about what they read, so there's not really a demonstration as to if they know what they are reading or not. Also, phonics skills need to be fully integrated into the curriculum. Students need to sound out their words. PTO parents noticed that when they would tell their kids to sound out the words, their kids were like, oh, well, our teachers tell us not to do that. Sounding out the words is essential to students understanding what those words mean and how they sound and look. So, as I was looking at this case, there were several things that I was looking at that I valued, and one of them was the recommendations from the reading supervisor and how they correlated with the concerns by the PTO. So I looked at those, and I thought that was very valuable when they both agreed, because it was very clearly a problem if the PTO and the supervisor both agreed on those. Also, the data from the grade levels was useful, especially at the point where you could definitely see that they started to drop. So from first to second grade, there was a bit of a rise, and then from second to third grade, that's when we started seeing the grade levels drop and not really recover after that. So this identifies some potentials for improvement here. Also, the concerns from the reading supervisor were helpful in creating solutions to the problem. So the list of things that we weren't doing in our classrooms, that was helpful. Now, some unresolved issues about this case. First off, the big question is, what sort of trainings have the teachers been receiving prior to this particular case? And I'm curious, because the reading supervisor mentioned that these cases that they were using outdated research models. So I'm kind of curious if they've been receiving any training at all. So that was an issue that was unresolved. Also, how long have the teachers been with the school? Or is it the newer teachers that are going to be needing help, or is it some of the older teachers who have been using outdated research models? Also, a big question is, what are the gaps in between grades? I'm kind of curious what sort of things are being left out. Is it phonics, or is it connotation? Those sorts of things. Another big question that I had was, would retention or summer school help fill in these gaps? Because obviously some of the older kids, this is going to be harder to implement if they have gaps. So 3 examples of continuous improvement based on interactions with the community. First off, a perception survey was sent out to parents and looked over by a team at the school to see what the parents thought of the current teachers as well as what needs to be changed. Also, contact with local after-school centers to inform them on potential strategies to teach the students who come there after school to fill in the gaps. And further collaboration will be encouraged because if they don't know what we're doing, then it's a little bit hard for them to teach the students that we have going there. Also, after-school programs at the school will be open to allowing parents to volunteer to help with their children and utilizing reading strategies along with the help of a licensed teacher. Obviously, this is completely voluntary, but this would help parents be involved with their kids at the school and also be able to help them at home. 3 examples of response to the community about their concerns. First off, these strategies that I have talked about will be mentioned at the next PTO meeting, along with an opening for questions or concerns about said strategies. A note home will be sent to parents about these changes, along with recommendations on how they can best help their students. And a parent-student open house will be offered following the implementation of these strategies to inform parents and help equip them to better assist their children in this process. Now, 3 examples of positive change based on the knowledge of policies and regulations. Curriculum change will be undertaken by a team of teachers who have demonstrated prestige in this area of reading, along with the assistance of a learning coach and or the reading specialist. Now, professional development will assist in this transition. This will be voluntary at first, but it will be mandatory if the administrator evaluations deem it so. So if they're seeing in the classroom that they're having trouble putting this into practice, then they will have to go to that training. But they will be paid for it, so it won't be a punishment, it'll just be something to help them. The grant money, if obtained, will assist in enhancing the after-school programs as well as providing paid training for the teachers, as mentioned above. Now, 3 examples of an ongoing dialogue to decision makers outside of the school. First, we're going to have a look at reading test scores throughout the district to determine if this problem is district-wide or mutually exclusive to Truman Elementary School. If it is mutually exclusive, we are open to an analysis of the other school's strategies so that we can maybe see what they're doing better to help our students at our school. Also, meetings with learning culture coaches will be established to determine appropriate training measures for teachers as well as potential experts to be brought in for in-services. And lastly, we're going to have to meet with the superintendent about these strategies so that we can gain the superintendent's support in obtaining the grant. Thank you for watching, and I hope that our strategies will be successful.